Welcome back to Inside Games, the only gaming news show brave enough to not dunk on NFTs with the opening line.
Because we're waiting until the second line. NFTs are dumb as shit.
Yeah, that's right, man. You look like a stupid bored ape or whatever, right?
Cha-ching!
But much like spending the holidays with your family and weird QAnon uncle, sometimes this world is filled with dumb shit you just gotta live with.
Or do you? Maybe it's time to push back. This week saw many game developers and publishers, including Ubisoft, dealing with intense community backlash after announcing NFT integrations with their games. One of which actually reversed course and agreed to remove them.
Oh, way to go, gamers. Man, I hate that word. Yet again, you are the last line of defense, gamers, against... What do gamers defend against, Lawrence?
Bruce, against the soulless co-opting of the world's best and most noble pastime by blind capitalistic greed. That's what.
Ah, yes. It would be a shame if the games industry, which earned $85 billion in revenue in 2020, were to somehow turn into a capitalist revenue farm.
Not my hobby. Perish that thought. It's pure, Bruce.
Point is, NFTs are officially entering the gaming space, whether you like it or not. Should you be worried or upset? Are you finally going to earn millions of dollars with your sick, nasty headshot skills? Hey, let's find out.
But first, just for the sake of the audience, what the hell are NFTs in the first place?
Everybody knows, Lawrence. We don't need to tell them.
I mean, even I kind of thought I had a grasp on it, but I was like, might be good for a refresher.
Well, it depends on who you ask. They're either an embezzlement scheme that's needlessly spewing carbon into the atmosphere, or they're the formative ownership technology on which the entire future internet metaverse will be built.
Yeah, opinions are charged about NFTs in both directions. For the sake of providing background info, we're trying to be responsible journalists here. For this week's news, we're going to be pretty clinical when talking about them right now, defining what NFTs are for the context of the stories. We'll get more into the pros and cons of their actual integration later.
So an NFT is an acronym for a non-fungible token. So fungible is a funny sounding word that basically means an asset is interchangeable in regards to its value. A dollar bill is fungible because you can replace it with another dollar bill and it holds exactly the same value.
In contrast to that, a non-fungible token can't be replaced with anything else. Its existence is entirely unique, and that uniqueness is enforced with blockchain technology. Once I create or mint a token, it's the only one of its kind forever and ever. I can make 500 of them for the same item or concept, but each one is identifiable and unique.
Yeah, right now NFTs are bought and sold to represent ownership. So let's say I create a token referencing some digital asset, commonly, obviously, art, and more commonly than that, a randomly created picture of an ape or a pixel man, like we've seen, and then you sell that token to someone else. That user then owns the token associated with that asset.
We could make another token for the same asset, but the intrinsic data of those tokens would show that the first one is first, and its time of minting and its trade history, that's all associated with it no matter what happens. So it will always be the first one, thus implying value and uniqueness.
To put it a kind of a simpler way, think of it like a certificate of authenticity for a piece of art, only it's entirely digital, and the art is digital too. So traditionally you'd buy a piece of art hoping that it would increase in value, which it only does provided you can prove the art is genuine and you actually own it, which is what that certificate of authenticity would do.
So long story short, NFTs are in a distributed database that pair item information or references with ownership data. The fact that it's decentralized means that multiple applications can access it, which means that theoretically, in a real-world situation, you could own an asset or digital thing in one game, like a trading card, sword, piece of land, a house, anything really, and another game could see and interpret that data in their game.
Yeah, that's the whole metaverse concept that you may have kind of seen thrown around. It doesn't exist yet in a meaningful way. We haven't seen it in a game. Not to mention other problems with its implementation, but we're going to get to that later.
You don't want Mark Zuckerberg's soulless android eyes floating outside your digital house? Well, that's it. School's over. Everyone gets an A.
Except for you, Philip. We saw you fall asleep on the group call, man. You're not faking anybody.
Enough learning. On to the news.
Ubisoft became the first AAA publisher to announce NFT integration on December 7th with the reveal of Ubisoft Quartz to much fanfare. I tell you what, everybody loved it on the internet, right? Woo! This platform will allow Ghost Recon Breakpoint players the opportunity to earn digital custom items called digits.
Right now, digits take the form of a tactical battle gun, a tactical battle helmet, or a tactical battle pants, each of which are engraved with a custom serial number that is visible in-game.
The NFT part of it enables players to buy, sell, and trade those items outside of the game on one of two approved resellers, Rarible.com or objkt.com, object.com. So that said, gamesindustry.biz noticed that the court's terms of use states that, quote, Ubisoft or our designees may take a fee based on the total value of the transaction for each transfer of a digit that you make through any marketplace.
Yeah, of course the terms of service say that. Why would Ubisoft try and create a game market unless they can skim money off of the activity in that market? And hey, if you're thinking that sounds an awful lot like Steam, that's because it is like Steam, but more on that later.
The announcement did not go over well, weirdly. YouTube commenters absolutely skewered the trailer with Ion Masood writing, quote, Ubisoft never fails to disappoint, and Phoenix Capishiro stating, quote, literally no one asked for this, the future of AAA gaming is looking grim.
Wouldn't you know it though, dislike counts have been removed by YouTube, so it's hard to get a good idea of the true ratioing of this video. But with 115,000 views and only 1.2 thousand upvotes, it doesn't take a lot of imagination to fill in those gaps. Kotaku reported on December 8th that by using plugins and skimming like page code, some users were actually able to view dislike numbers, which stood at 24,000 downvotes just a day after publication.
1K upvotes to 24,000 downvotes is a certified yike, which Ubisoft is really good at earning these days.
And wouldn't you know it, the story didn't get a whole lot better for Ubisoft in the following weeks. On December 14th, Kotaku reported that even Ubisoft's own developers didn't understand or agree with the implementation of NFT technology in their games.
The report quotes anonymous employees posting on the company's internal social media hub, oh boy, asking reasonable questions like, quote, is it really worth the extremely negative publicity this will cause? And, quote, how can you look at private property, speculation, artificial scarcity, and egoism, then say, yes, this is good, I want that, let's put it in art.
And it seems like the market itself didn't care much for the integration either. Apex Legends senior character artist Liz Edwards did some poking around on December 19th, finding multiple listings for these rare, one-of-a-kind tactical in-game items, but only 15 sales total, amounting to just under $400 of asset movement.
Reason for that might be that despite the decentralized nature of the ownership data, Ubisoft does restrict the buying and selling of these items to those that actually play Ghost Recon Breakpoint. Why, you ask? Because they want people to play the fucking game. Yeah, and apparently they don't mind if it's a bunch of crypto bros just trying to mine out digital assets to sell.
Again, if you're thinking, gosh, this sounds a whole lot like Steam, because it is, it's just not owned by Valve.
But Ubisoft would not be Ubisoft if they didn't step in cow shit before putting their foot in their own mouth. Which they did on December 21st.
In a statement to Decrypt, Ubisoft blockchain technical director Dieter Genevois said that Ubisoft, quote, received a lot of feedback since the announcement, and we hear both the encouragement and the concerns, and that they, quote, understand where the sentiment towards the technology comes from.
Oh, this is good, Lawrence. This sounds really good. I know exactly where the statement's going. Oh, no, wait, hold on. Then Genevois continued saying, quote, this experiment is meant to understand how the value proposition of decentralization can be received and embraced by our players. We know it is a major change that will take time, but we will stay true to our 3 principles. Those being, use the tech responsibly. Okay, all right. I don't know what that means. To build a safe environment. Boy, nothing could be more general. And to only leverage energy-efficient proof-of-stake blockchains, which is also a very relative statement, but I at least appreciate it's specific there.
Yeah, at least that cites something actually enforceable. And to Ubisoft's credit, they do have a whole chunk listed about how their specific implementation is way more energy efficient than most, because that is one of the major knocks against NFT technology. Again, we'll get to that in a minute. Bizarrely, despite saying that they have 3 principles, there's a surprise 4th principle, and that is to, quote, focus on meaningful value propositions for players that benefit their gaming experience.
Hard to see how requiring 600 hours of playtime to generate a helmet is something that will benefit someone's gaming experience. I mean, unless you count idling in a game to fluff Ubisoft's engagement metrics as meaningful, I certainly do not.
Monthly active users are off the charts. They love it.
There's just 10 people sitting in a server.
Gosh, who knows? It's also just in general, it's really hard to trust Ubisoft to be principled about much of anything these days, given that the company has been repeatedly accused of toxic workplace culture, to which they have yet to announce or implement really any meaningful changes.
So basically, Ubisoft is not walking away from this tech. They can't even really provide a good reason why it will benefit players or their experience in the game, unless you think you can make some money off tactical battle pants, which also is not happening currently.
But there is at least one company out there that actually listens to its customers or their very angry reactions. GSC Game World, developers of the upcoming Stalker 2, Heart of Chernobyl announced NFT integration on December 15th before overwhelming negative feedback led them to delete the original announcement and reverse the decision just 1 day later.
I love that they deleted it. They were like, instead of just leaving it up and being like, you know what, here's the update, they were just like, no, get rid of it.
So get rid of it.
So to GSC's credit, at least this implementation of NFTs, it does sound cooler than tactical battle guns, even if it could all be accomplished just as easily without NFTs. According to the now deleted announcement, the quote, Stalker metaverse would have used blockchain technology to let the community own a piece of Stalker 2.
He originally only described one practical application of that, and it's the ability to become an NPC in the game world.
That's cool. I think
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's cool. Original plans would have players bidding on an NFT that would entitle them to be scanned in as an in-game NPC. So whoever wins the auction would then own the NFT, which could then be sold and traded for a period of time before a claim date, where the final owner could be scanned in as a game NPC.
Yeah, and at that point, presumably the NFT would be done or lose value, unless you wanted to own the token associated with some rando NPC in a video game that isn't you. Questions like that usually mean you're thinking too hard about NFTs, though.
But thinking hard is what the internet does, Lawrence. They love to think and then talk. And many were concerned that the crawl of NFTs would substantially intrude on their game experience. Not to mention, again, being a feature nobody asked for in the first place.
GSC Game World posted an also deleted follow-up statement addressing the negative backlash, explaining that, quote, we have no publisher, and that, quote, like all other devs, we need two main resources, time and money.
They also explained that their NFT plans would extend to placing names or nicknames of NFT owners in the game world, or linking multiplayer items like skins, gloves, tattoos, and badges to the technology. Ultimately, they said, quote, we are not asking for support, but at least we hope you can hear us and understand our reasons. Narrator,
The internet did not.
and what a surprise.
To their credit, yeah, they're an independent game dev. They're trying to make this big open world environment sim game without a publisher. Yeah, they need cash. But yeah, game players are usually not very empathetic to those concerns. Also, I have to admit, if you're gonna put names of people from the internet into this game world, if you're skulking around like burned out Chernobyl, Russia, and you see Darth Balls 69 like written on the wall, not very immersive. Even if it is kind of a neat idea. Anyway, because of the unrelenting negativity, GSC Game World backed off on December 16th, stating that, quote, the interests of our fans and the players are the top priority for the team. We're making this game for you to enjoy, whatever the cost is.
I hope they don't go bankrupt.
That really conjured images of a bunch like crunch, like working with no pay. I mean, I'm not saying that NFTs would save them from that, but money does solve a lot of problems. Yeah, it helps.
Well, I guess this is a heartening end, at least for the gamers, provided you don't really care that GSC Game World just lost an avenue of funding to complete their game, which many have been waiting for since 2007's Stalker Shadow of Chernobyl. So, this may not have been the right choice.
I'm in that boat. I really liked Stalker. I wasn't a huge fan of Clear Sky or Call of Pripyat, but if they're making a full sequel, I would like that to happen. And if there's some Saudi oil baron who just really wants to be in the game and is willing to throw down $2 million on a thing, it's a possible way that NFTs wouldn't be objectively evil. Maybe. I'm just floating that out there.
But wherever you'll find big dreams and disappointing reality, Peter Fable Molyneux can't be far behind.
Yes, the developer behind quirky cult classic games like Populous, Black and White, and the Fable series is back. You haven't heard a whole lot from old Pete, at least not since 2016's Goddess Wars, which is still listed as early access on Steam and earned very negative reviews.
It turns out having a recognizable name and throwing the latest investment buzzword into your game does get you back into the ring somehow. Molyneux announced his new project called Legacy on December 11th, which not only will sell digital land via NFTs, but will do so using its own cryptocurrency, naturally called Legacy Coin.
This could be cool. It could be like EVE Online levels of these crazy stories of people's lives getting ruined coming out of this, but we'll see. The game, as it's described, revolves around players starting businesses and curating the towns that sprout up around those businesses. As Molyneux describes in an interview with The Verge, quote, you're responsible for getting all the commodities that those design products need, and you're responsible for winning the design competitions that go on between you and the other players.
And what would happen to that entire ecosystem and its value if the game were to shut down? Molyneux said, I have no idea of the answer, to be completely frank.
And that is the truth with pretty much any NFT integration. It certainly conjures up narratives of people with thousands of dollars invested in in-game assets only to have the game shut down and any digital worth of those assets evaporate immediately. Or spicier yet, the entire game is acquired by a different company that suddenly decides to change its management or moderation of the in-game economy.
Then again, this is Peter Molyneux we're talking about, who envisioned us all having realistic conversations with a ratty British boy via the Microsoft Kinect in 2009.
Hi Claire, you okay?
Actually, I'm a bit nervous.
Nervous? I don't believe it.
Which did not happen, obviously.
No, not even a little. They didn't even release a demo or anything. Ultimately, though, there is a lot of negative sentiment out there around NFTs. Fortunately, it doesn't seem like it's going away anytime soon, at least not because of negative sentiment. GSC Game World may have backed off on their plans, but other larger companies like Square Enix and Electronic Arts have all declared their intention to launch products integrating with NFTs if they haven't already done so.
The advantages to NFT technology are interesting, if not entirely theoretical. The decentralized aspect of the database means you can theoretically own a digital asset in one ecosystem and then carry it into another.
But remember that the token it's just a small chunk of data describing relative information and ownership. It's up to the individual games about how to interpret and represent that information in-game if they do at all.
Well, there's always a catch, isn't there, Lawrence? Why am I not a fucking billionaire? I don't understand. Let's say you have a sword in Fortnite. Another game could read your ownership of that sword and theoretically represent it in their game. Or they could read that ownership and give you a Fortnite t-shirt. Or they could read that information and use it to profile you for advertising.
It's the individual developers that have to interpret and represent that data, which means there's a cost related to doing so. And if it's not profitable for them to do it, they won't do it. So that means it's all going to revolve around getting money out of you, as it usually does. The idea of assets changing over time is why they're seen as investments, though. And this is kind of a cool idea. It's a cool idea, provided you just think about it in the ether as a science fiction concept. So let's say you buy land in Legacy, Peter Molyneux's game. You got a whole town, it's bustling, and then suddenly Legacy links up with Facebook. So now people in the Facebook metaverse can swing over and see your Legacy town. Suddenly your digital land is now worth a lot more because it's connected and has appreciated in value and use in the market. Ironically though, the decision to do that is entirely in the hands of private companies, which doesn't really reinforce the decentralized aspect of the technology. If two private companies still have to talk to each other to make something happen, then the fact that the database is decentralized doesn't really matter.
NFT criticisms, however, are not theoretical. Many call out the environmental impact of NFTs, given that it takes a lot of computational power to process transactions and update the distributed blockchain, though there has yet to be concrete evidence linking Ethereum traffic directly to NFTs, or if that traffic, and thus its generated carbon emissions, would have been generated by miners regardless.
Yeah, the analogy I see thrown around is like it's like a plane flight. If you didn't buy a ticket, the plane was probably going to take off anyway and spew all of its emissions to the atmosphere. So is an individual responsible for the plane and all the fuel it burns if it would have done it anyway? I mean, some planes fly completely empty just because that's their flight table. So it's messy, but it's hard to avoid the thought that there would just be a lot less crypto traffic in general without NFTs in the first place. And with the planet in the middle of a global warming crisis, the absolute last thing we need as a human race is to be increasing our carbon footprint, especially for technology that doesn't seem to have any practical value.
But I love the ape.
I want to show people I have too much money.
Many also accuse NFTs of simply being a front for money laundering or a scam perpetuated by those that are already grifted into the system and need fresh money to cash out, which it totally is. Parallels are drawn to the fine art world, where high-dollar art sales have been used to launder cash or drive up the value of art auction houses that are invested in by the artists themselves. So that's definitely a scam.
And there's a growing trend that people are finding where people are basically creating other accounts to fake sales, transferring money between them just to create the illusion that NFTs are selling for tens of thousands of dollars, presumably so they can land one sale and cash out of the system.
There's also the logical disconnect that NFTs both confer ownership but are not administered by any central governing body. So an NFT is just a collection of data associated with the user that contains no ownership rights unto itself. Contracts can be executed between parties involved with an NFT sale, but then again, that can happen without NFTs and still be legally binding.
And from the gamer perspective, we've already seen the ramifications of NFTs in microcosm. It's Steam, as we said before. Valve games like Team Fortress 2 and Dota 2 use a similar, not entirely identical, but a similar implementation to allow players to generate, buy, and sell game assets like hats and trading cards. I remember when trading cards came out, I read up on it, and I remember trying to explain it to people, and they just sat there with a blank expression, and we're like, that's stupid. And I was like, yes, it is, but people are doing it. So yeah, in response, and you're gonna see this too, players launched idle servers in Team Fortress 2 to farm out item drops, or utilities like Idlemaster that would iteratively launch games in your Steam library and just leave them running on your PC to generate trading cards. And guess what? Then you're burning electricity to try and suck money out of a artificially inflated digital it's the same thing. Anyway, similarly, Valve takes a cut of all of those transactions, so it's just another revenue driver for them.
That's right, which is probably why they banned NFTs from their platform in October, because they already knew they were making them. To the cheers of many, by the way, of course.
Good guy Valve, yeah.
Yeah, good guy Valve. They made NFTs 15 years ago, which is extra weird because they've been doing it for so long. And it's their private system. Whatever.
and that has made shit weird on Steam too, with like the currency exchanges between regions and the scams people try to pull on each other. It made Steam account hacking a huge problem, because if you had valuable TF2 items, people would gun for your ass. So yeah, all of these problems that are happening now happened with Steam in like 2016. Many have also cited the real money auction house that launched with Diablo 3, pointing at how the game's design had to accommodate the possibility that players could, or worse, would have to, buy their way into higher difficulty levels for the gear. Also, inevitably, players flooded the auction house with thousands of swords nobody wanted. Kind of like a bunch of stupid-looking apes that nobody asked for.
But, Lawrence, as you will learn, as we will all learn about crypto and NFTs and the dollar and any other currency, where there is money to be made, private industry will always try to make it. There will always be a layer of gaming that stays innocent and pure from such forces. So just go shower your money on those parts of the industry. If you don't want to fund Ubisoft, a giant company making NFTs, then don't. Go like the Stalker thing kind of makes me sad, because I want Stalker and I want them to have a lot of money to make a great game. So that makes a little more sense to me.
I think the true thing is, if you're going to be looking at AAA games, the most expensive big budget games, they're going to include every possible avenue they can to earn money. That's how it always was. The problem was, it used to be pretty clean. You would pay $60 and then DLC came out, and then loot boxes came out, and now we've got this. So if you're getting tired of this, just step away from AAA. And I understand that sucks, because the games won't be as big and loud and ridiculous looking, but they got to pay for all that glitz and glam somehow. So if you can just go back to like the Steam indie layer, where every game looks like it was on a PlayStation 1 or a Super Nintendo, there's none of that shit. But again, there's a trade-off, and that's just how the market works.
That's right. If you don't like Marvel movies, then don't go see them. But you're like, but I still want to go see those big movies. Well, then you're funding the machine. So it depends on if you want to fund that machine or not.
And we're not saying it's a bad thing to make your voice heard. The independent companies will still listen, but if you're just screaming at Ubisoft, man, they don't give a fuck. They don't. Maybe they do a little bit, but there's the money they can earn, and it's just like that.